Hi again, everybody. This is Lindsay Martinez. I'm one of the hosts of your Conservation Relevancy Community site, and we're back here learning more about pilot states for the Relevancy Roadmap. And with me today is Elizabeth Middleton from the Indiana DNR, who's going to be telling us about pilot efforts there. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I'm from Indiana DNR, and I work with the Division of Fish and Wildlife as the Stewardship Outreach Specialist.
Excellent. Thanks so much for being here. So we're going to give an intro to your pilot state efforts here. So I want to ask, what are you doing in your project, and how are you concretely using the Relevancy Roadmap for your project?
Well, Lindsay, our pilot was designed to address the constituent culture barrier 3, which is the one that says that constituents may not recognize the threats facing fish and wildlife, habitats, and humans, or how to engage to address those threats. And so we think that one way to address that strategy that kind of falls under that barrier is to find ways to get people to participate in conservation through volunteerism. Since I direct the stewardship program for Division of Fish and Wildlife, that's kind of where we started. And I used this pilot opportunity to build the stewardship program kind of around the Relevancy Roadmap, since I had the luxury of building a program and also knowing about the roadmap ahead of time. And we used this pilot and this building opportunity to kind of work on two different pieces of the stewardship program. First, the pilot allowed me to work with Matt Dunphy and Ann Fortune on building the conceptual model and the results chains for 3 core stewardship program activities. Those activities are volunteering at property events, staff training to support those property events, and then also designing the results chains for volunteer monitoring opportunities. Once we had the conceptual model and the results chains, we've also been working on designing evaluations for each of those 3 activities as well. The other piece is that we're following the steps laid out under the strategy in Barrier 3 in the Relevancy Roadmap. I think there's 4 or 5 steps. And we're at the very beginning step where we are conducting interviews of people that live within 25 miles of 2 of our Division of Fish and Wildlife properties. One is an urban adjacent property and one is a pretty rural property. We're doing these interviews so that we can learn more about what's important to our constituents, why they use or don't use our properties, and what might interest them enough to donate some of their free time to a property.
Awesome. So sounds like some social science research and inspiring some volunteering that really is going to enhance conservation by getting more people involved. And that's what the roadmap is all about.
Yeah.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about something that you've seen as a big success or an accomplishment so far, and also something that's been challenging on your road?
Sure. Admittedly, we're further along in the development of the conceptual model, results chains, and evaluation portion of the pilot. And it's been super fun to work on developing the foundational logic of the program. But the biggest accomplishment has been taking that work, even though it's still in draft form, and taking it with me to conversations that involve the direction of the stewardship program for the division. So for example, recently I had a chance to kind of be involved in a research proposal that was involving one of our oldest volunteer monitoring opportunities called the Archer's Index. And the Archer's Index asks bow hunters in the fall to report on, I think it's 10 to 15 wildlife species so that we can get population trends over time. The proposal was about, kind of how much data do we need and what's the most cost-effective way to manage volunteers. And I was able to bring the conceptual model and the results chain into that conversation and really advocate for investing in increasing our understanding of who our volunteer population is, and also both our current population and also our prospective population of volunteers. And I feel like having had that foundational groundwork laid allowed me to have like a more productive conversation, and also help me advocate for the need to invest in people information. In terms of challenges, interviewing constituents has been our biggest challenge. So initially we were gonna do property-based focus groups at our 2 different focal properties, but then COVID-19 happened. So we realized in-person interviewing wasn't going to be the right approach for right now. And so we pivoted to a postcard mailer that invited people to participate in virtual one-on-one interviews. So we did that this summer, and the return rate for interviews was really low. So we're still trying to find ways to intercept people so that we can get to know them better. The purpose of the interviews is to learn more about them so that we can better design events that are aligned with their interests, and also hopefully point us to potential partners. We know that there's lots of well-developed ways of going about intercepting people and interviewing people, but we're trying really hard to do this part of the project within the budget of the pilot, because otherwise we feel like it won't be repeatable for our division in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think some of these methodologies and methods and challenges you're talking about could be really helpful for people to understand. So hopefully people can explore that a little bit with you and replicate what works and understand what'll be challenging.
Sure.
One more last question for you on our introduction to Indiana.
Okay.
And can you just tell us if you have any advice or suggestions, recommendations for people implementing the roadmap?
Yeah, I recognize the luxury I had of starting a new program and using the Relevancy Roadmap as a starting point. I guess I would recommend that whether you're starting a new program or you're reimagining an existing program, a lot of the thought work exists right there in the Relevancy Roadmap for you, especially if you're doing something new and maybe don't have a background in social science. I found it to be a really useful place to start. The other thing is that once you use the Relevancy Roadmap as a starting point, you really have to take time to lay the foundation of the work you plan to do. You gotta ask yourself, what do you think your program is gonna do ultimately? What do you think are the intermediate steps that somebody will have to take to get to your ultimate outcome? And then how specifically are you gonna measure change in your program? Once you lay it out, you're in a really good position to begin brainstorming ideas or evaluating opportunities as they come to you, because you have put the time into being thoughtful about the basic logic of your work. I also think that new initiatives need to work harder to demonstrate progress. If you think about it, wildlife biologists have spent hundreds of years defining what a successful population outcome is. But we in relevancy work are still thinking hard every day about what success looks like when we're doing conservation with people, especially with new groups of people. So the more we work to think about appropriate measures for measuring change in this kind of work, I think the better any one program will be, but also sharing that information back out to the relevancy community will make sure that we're learning from each other and growing together.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. And that's a perfect way for me to remind people to check out the conservation relevancy community, share what you have, ask questions, be engaged. And also remember there's so much information present in the roadmap to help you with planning. And you can check that out online as well. Thank you so much for that advice. I think that'll be really helpful to people. Hopefully people will ask some questions to you, and I think we'll look forward to keeping up with you and getting updates about what's happening in Indiana with relevancy.
That sounds great. Thanks for this opportunity.
Of course, thank you so much.